Hello and welcome back to the BDTV Breakfast Show. This is the newspaper review segment, and today we'll be analyzing and reviewing the top stories on our dailies. I'm here with Mohammed, who is an in-house analyst. He'll be joining me to do the review.
Thank you very much.
Good morning.
Good morning. How are you doing?
I'm good. How are you doing?
It's a mixed morning for many Nigerians, right?
Right. Considering the disappointments.
Because in fact, I put down some names that I'm going to be able to mention this morning. Yesterday,
you have some thoughts.
They should just be able to maybe retire or just be able to excuse themselves from the Super Eagles. I'm sure we're at the point where we're watching it together. And you see some, supposed professionals, and you see the way they bungled things yesterday, to me, I think Samuel Chukwueze, maybe it's actually time Becca should have been invited. Then the captain of the side himself, what he did yesterday was really, really suicidal and catastrophic. Because the equalizing goal, don't forget, was 91st minute they equalized.
Literally,
and the way he just be able to breeze past the almighty captain of the team. I don't know. I mean, but with the way it is now, don't forget, this will be back because it's the way it's actually pointing is that back-to-back World Cups now. 2022 we couldn't go.
Yes. 2026
it is the pointers are that we may not likely go there. Now next one
there's still a chance.
One thing there is okay,
we can still fight it out in the gulag in the
where
in the gulag.
okay, maybe
right
because 9 teams represent Africa.
Yes.
There are 9 groups, so the top teams will qualify automatically. Now
yes.
The 4 best losers will have to go and play another round of semi-finals, play finals. Then before you now go and play an intercontinental playoff, maybe against a South American champion.
Yeah.
A South American,
the
fourth place. So
optimistic.
that long route, if you don't qualify as the group winners, if you don't be able to win the group, it's just like you say, it's a gulag. The process for you to be able to get to the World Cup. But with the way it is now, South Africa is already 6 points ahead of us. They are 13 points, and we are 7.
They are through. I don't think anyone will catch up with them at this point.
It is really, that's why I say.
But we play them next, so.
We are playing them in September. Hopefully, we'll be able to get the result. We are going to Joe Box to go and play them.
Yes.
They come here to Nigeria to play us.
We
have to go in back there.
The result was disappointing.
The performance yesterday was disappointing as
well. Nigerians would argue that the Super Eagles' strategy is to score and then relax.
Okay.
Which is not been helping us very well.
Of course,
right? Because whenever we score, we
retreated.
We retreat and then we relax. We try to defend the one goal. And
maybe that could also be because we scored at 70-something minutes. Remember they labored, but the way they labored, the way they were not able to crack them open, and then you see that those true balls. Normally, if you want to watch football and if you analyze, you see that those threaded passes, those splinter passes, defense splitting passes that you always see in a typical, world grand stage of football showpiece, were not really there. So they actually look a bit laborious when they are playing. They're just laboring, trying to just be able to see anywhere any luck will come from. And then fine, you're at least able to get one, only for them to be able to bungle it at the nick of time.
Well, this is a very interesting top story for many Nigerians.
I'm talking about it today.
Let's get back into business. All right. So on the BusinessDay paper today, the top story says U.S. Fed rates hold intensifies Nigeria Eurobonds sell-off. Right. And let's just dwell on that a little before we move on to the next one. Obviously, the next one is about Dangote's refinery selling jet fuel to Saudi Arabia. Okay. After several sales to the US as well. Okay. So now we're talking about the US Fed rates, Eurobonds. The US, the Feds, they held interest rates, right? Which this month, which might motivate more investors to keep the money or sell to cheaper,
of course, in the higher market.
So what does this mean?
Of course,
for investors and for Nigeria.
So we've seen on Nigeria, of course, I'm talking about Nigerian investors, and then most importantly on our Nigerian Eurobond. So remember before now, the Fed met last week, the US Fed, and there were prognoses that the rates there are likely going to be a rate cut. Because inflation was actually inching up again in the US. But it was, first of all, was actually shocking and surprising that the rate was held at 4.5%. But the snowball effect, you understand, the domino effect of whatever happened in the US, is that it's going to be able to affect most of the Euro bonds, dollar-denominated bonds, and other Euro bonds that, especially sub-Saharan Africa, emerging economies, tend to be able to have in those nations. So what we've seen is that the yield, if you able to look at when our readers, when our listeners at home, able to read the story done by Enola, we'll be able to see that since that last week, there have been the yield, the returns that people are actually able to have on the Eurobond, have actually been inching up. People have actually been able to sell off those Eurobonds as a result of rate cut, so as to be able to take, make certain gains, on their investment. So sell-off has actually been able to ramp up. And then what we have actually been able to see there is that people are now moving away, towards risky assets, because remember the rate has actually been held. So
yes.
They held the rate. The implication is that investors will definitely be able to sell off the ones that they are holding and be looking for other assets that will be able to give them higher returns.
Yes.
Which is just simple.
So was that the reason why Nigeria increased its
Eurobond sales? Exactly. Yes. Because of since they're actually able to hold also, it's an opportunity for SSAs, Sub-Saharan Africa, to quickly sell Eurobonds and lure investors with higher rates. You understand? Yes. So it is just a strategy that is always done in that market.
Okay? But it seems that the US or Europe rather and China is still more attractive.
Yes, they are, because the geopolitical uncertainty as well.
Yes.
And the position of tariff that Trump has actually been able to impose of them has been able to also put them at some tight corners. Yes, they have encountered tariffs. They've actually been able to trade wars, the simmering trade wars that we actually be able to is actually filling up in the air, is affecting investors because the uncertainty is lingering. Nobody really knows what's going to happen. So now, safe haven, they could be risky assets. That's what I'm saying. They are risky assets. Investors ordinarily would not have been able to put so much of their investment into SSA bonds. I'm talking about Sub-Saharan African bonds. Eurobonds that actually be able to be floated by Sub-Saharan Africa. But because of these, the quadruple trade wars between Canada, China, and Europe, that's tripartite trade and US, has actually been able to push a lot of investors to look into, Eurobonds. Eurobonds are actually coming from Africa, and that has actually been able to see how it has been inching up, in the last 2, 3, 4, 5.
So what future are you looking at now?
So the market itself, we know that Trump. What we sort of understand is that Trump will definitely be able to maintain this. This Trump, it doesn't appear that he's actually backing down.
It doesn't.
So, and it's likely going to be in that way that it is a good opportunity for emerging economies, Sub-Saharan Africa's, North Africa, Middle East, and then some of these emerging economies to quickly be able to take advantage of the market situation right now. The US too, just like we said, rate cut was expected last month, but because of the uncertainty as well, the Fed decided to be able to maintain the rate, so to hold the rate. So some of these, I may not actually be able to have a crystal ball to be able to predict it, but we know that this month and next month will play a very pivotal role to tell us how that particular market, the market sentiment,
especially considering many of the tariff
positions, threats, and all of the other economic wars that are likely going to be able to follow this recent relationship or these recent interactions between US, Europe, and I think so. That is, creating that sell-off, as I said, a lot of sell-offs, and that's give an advantage to also be able to sell more Eurobonds and give us that opportunity to do that.
Very interesting. Well, the next story on the Business Day paper says Dangote's refineries jet fuel adds Saudi to new markets. Right.
There have been reactions to that anyway.
Yes, there have been a lot of reactions, but good news? Do you think this is good news?
Okay, because maybe it's a good news to them, but bad news because most of the food are supposed to be actually available for local usage, exactly, would be a bit impacted. And that is on the back of the Naira for crude discussion that is still stalling. Yeah, we have that discussion will resume tomorrow. Luckily, for Salah, the Minister of Finance was actually, I think I overheard him speaking yesterday, discussion will be resumed. And by resuming discussion, that will actually be able to give them an opportunity to see that the market is still here for him. At the time, he has tried to be able, I think he's doing Jet A1 fuel, not petrol for now. This is Jet A1 fuel, right? Okay, this is aviation fuel.
This is aviation fuel.
Okay, okay, great. So, because the aviation fuel, he has actually complained about that for a while, that only 3% of it is actually sold in Nigeria. The remaining 97% is actually imported. And now by adding Saudi Arabia market to it, we know that he's trying to be able to cover the African market. He's covered some sections of European market as well. That he's actually selling the Jet A1 fuel to. So be able to sell to Saudi Arabia now is another good another good achievement, another feat.
So now, it's a feat for Dangote. Is it a fit for Nigeria.
So because he has claimed that.
I mean, this is good for
for the business.
For the FX, the FX.
So coming to the country.
Environment, exactly. And
FX to come in, and but the question is there was
also our authority, as oil producers, right?
Exactly.
We're no longer just putting oil out there. We're putting something refined. No, for once.
Value added products.
Exactly. So in as much so what is the contention? Are people saying Dangote should not sell jet fuel to?
No. Okay. So he has claimed, because remember,
yes,
diesel and jet fuel. In fact, he has launched those. He started producing them.
Yes.
Before petrol came into the market, and then the complaint that he had was that local producers, local players are not buying from him. At the time, there was, in fact, a lot of that issue, and that was why even when he started when he started releasing the petrol to the market, one of the things he complained about was able to go to the market to put a ban on importation of fuel into the country. So he was saying then that already 97% of jet fuel and diesel is importing them. Only 3% is sold in Nigeria because they refuse to buy. There could be a whole lot of
so why is that?
dynamics. At the time, you see some of them, could you really be able to, what can we be able to attribute that to? What in local politics like bad belly or something, maybe it could be. Or maybe some people are just deliberately trying to be able to frustrate his efforts, because he cried out.
The fact that Saudi Arabia is buying from him means that
there's something of quality.
Yes, exactly. The issue is not.
So you say most of airliners, for example, airlines, diesel operators, most of the fuel stations in Nigeria, we're not even buying. That's diesel, and then the airline operators were not buying from him. He complained about that.
Yes.
And to be able to say, quite a whole lot of them, he was already selling them out to other neighboring African countries and to Europe. So that's what I'm saying. Adding Saudi Arabia to the fleet, adding Saudi Arabia to the base, to the customer base now, is a good thing. But I know discussions were actually ongoing, between the Ministry of Aviation at the time waded into the discussion to see how to be able to mediate the issue between what are the pain points, what are the complaints of the buyers themselves. Maybe they're complaining, it's too expensive for them, can't be able to get it, it's not so competitive, they're able to get something cheaper from abroad at the time. I'm sure there were those discussions.
So I was, at the end of the day, we come to the discussion of price.
Maybe pricing was what they complained about then. I'm talking about early last year. And then we don't expect it to be able to sell below cost. There's a cost of production involved that would definitely also need to be able to sell. So adding this to it now, it's a mixed bag also for Nigeria. It has the pros, the positives, and the negatives that's likely going to be able to emanate out of that. But selling jet won't fall there. I don't know if the quantity have actually been meant, the quantum of what he has been able to push out there to the Saudi Arabia market. But that is a very important, a laudable feat,
it is.
for the Dangote business.
It's a win for Nigeria. It's a win for Dangote, right? Because these are people with very stringent quality standards, and then meeting them, it's laudable.
It's laudable. I mean, meeting them.
Yes. Well,
I think we're able to mention that as well. Okay, that's about 348,000 barrels.
Yes.
Was actually able to push out to there. So of course, we're able to see how these and then what people are actually how the reactions definitely be able to follow.
Definitely, and hopefully we get to patronize locally. Right, I think
that's where the challenge is still lying.
Yes, that's where the challenge still lies. So we are exporting. So it's like we are producing or we are cooking for others. Meanwhile, the family is hungry.
Of course, I mean that's the analogy.
That's how I see it.
And then you're pleasing the external at the detriment of your own family members or your relations or those that are closer to you.
Exactly.
Maybe that's the way it is anyway. But remember, it's also that's why sometimes the regulators need to come in to. Yeah, I've seen the U.S. market at the time. He's been able to also venture into the U.S. market, especially since the major player in that space that is able to supply the GT1 for Phillips 66 shuts down. Had a problem in the U.S. and that was last year. But now adding Saudi Arabia into that, so it's because that was where he kept saying that. There are markets, there are people ready to be able to take, or there are off-takers that are ready to take this product.
That was even the issue with the Naira for crude.
Right?
If you're not going to take this,
I have off-takers who are
options,
ready
right,
to be able to take off this. So, and that's the way it is. As much as possible, we always want to be able to have a middle ground to ensure that there is a win-win for them as well, the players, I mean the buyers, the wholesale segment who are actually buying from him, and then the producer as well, the person actually producing, needed to be able to have at least some margins.
Well, we'll definitely look forward to the future of this, and for more local patronage as well. That is something that is very, very, very key. And moving on to the Punch newspaper, moving on to the Punch newspaper, it says on the top, says dollar for petrol, marketers protest, Dangote export fuel to US, others, which we just talked about. First Bank files appeal, injunction and stay of execution. Cargo remains under arrest. Well, the top story on the paper says senators Ezekwesili clash. INEC faults Natasha's recall process. Ex-minister slams Senate over bias in sexual harassment case. Hearing adjourned indefinitely. Well, it's a big discussion, right?
Oh, very big one.
It's a very
I don't
big
know if you get a glimpse to watch a site, have an optic. Because I remember, I think I saw that before I went to watch the Nigeria match, which was that point anyway, and I saw the exchange, the fiery exchange between Madam Obi and Senator Ifeanyi Oyeboyi. I think that's his name. I'm not really so sure. Nwayeboyi, that's his name. Senator Ifeanyi. The two of them had a very, very, and in fact, they used some unprinted names on each other. Even though, so it was the fallout, or it was the commencement of the hearing of Senator Natasha's claim.
Yes,
so the Senate House on Ethics, Discipline, Rules and Privileges, met yesterday, and then to be able to listen to witnesses as well as the counsel to Senator Natasha. They came to the floor of the Senate yesterday to present their case and to be able to present witnesses to show that the allegations leveled against the Senate President was actually true. First, when the gathering, I mean the sitting was to start, they tried to be able to shut out Madam Obi, that she cannot be able to come in. But she forced herself in to say, no, I am in Nigeria and I have the right to actually be here. I mean, I'm trying to be able to quote in her word what she said by herself. So at the committee hearing on ethics, privileges and public petitions, so we will see her there with Abiola Akinyode Afolabi, who was actually the counsel, was actually the lawyer to Apotu Oduagan. Then the chief petitioner, you understand, who was actually the one that came all the way from Kogi Central, named Zubairu Yakubu. Because if you remember very well, just a little bit of the timeline of what happened. When Senator Natasha presented the petition, it was stated that by the rule of the House, a senator cannot, initiate submission of a petition. It has to come from the constituent, from within our constituency. And that was actually why I think a day after, this man called Zubairu Yakubu was the one who forwarded the petition, who petitioned the Senate Committee on Ethics, Privileges, and Public Petition to say that the Senate President is actually has actually been accused of sexual harassment. But when the issue happened, and then when Madam Obi, got into the House yesterday, first as I said, Senator Ifeanyi was talking. He was talking, and she said he should shut up. And I think that's what she said. The senator should shut up, and they thought the reaction from the senator was to tell her that you are a fool, and that is actually a very, very heavy word. As I said, maybe it's an unprinted names. I don't know if you can be able to say that. I hope people will be able to fall into. But that was actually it was serious exchange.
It was what was said. It was what was said.
So
and which
he said, "Use shut." And the senator, how will she on the floor be telling him to shut up? People are saying, "Shut up." Is it an abuse? Is shut up an offensive remark? But those sides and those angles of the stories are just there.
And now the INEC has come forward to say that The petition
there were
filed
holes, exactly.
there were gaps.
There were gaps and the holes in the way it had actually been filed.
Yes, exactly. Especially in terms of address of the petitioner. You know, they needed some details that were excluded from what was submitted.
Okay.
So I think what does this even say about the validity of the claim? Because the recall process was, I don't know, it came out of nowhere.
Okay,
all of a sudden
we just heard that. Did you see the truckloads? Did you see the truckloads of documents that they actually brought to
I saw.
To initiate
Did
the
you see
process
the
of
queues?
recall. Because that's what I'm saying. Say about, I think in our constituency about close to 500,000 people in the constituency.
470 something thousand people.
And then that was way.
How many people
voted for her? I don't think almost half of them, and the polling units and things like that came up with the recall process. I mean, initiated it.
Yes.
And then, but INEC, through the first remark that he released yesterday to say, oh, this process, it has its own way of actually the way it's actually be able to go through. And as a result of that, it has not been fully. So they pick holes in it, and I'm sure they were. I think I've been able to put some of them down when I was actually going through the story yesterday from INEC to say. But just immediately after that, after INEC released this, was when Justice Obiora Egwuatu as well, I think, recused herself from the case. I remember that you heard about that, the case, because the Senate adjourned the House indefinitely because they said the case is in court, and they would not like to be able to trample or engage in an act that would be able to be contemptuous to court proceedings. So this Senate Committee on Ethics, public privileges and ethics privileges and public petition decided to be able to adjourn indefinitely pending the resolution of the case in court. But the justice as himself yesterday, Obiora Egwuatu, a no-nonsense judge, recused herself because of an allegation of bias by the third defendant, Akpabio, who claimed that the judge has actually been biased against him and cannot give him a fair hearing. I think those are, the whole lot of dynamics that actually be able to take place in the court. Then from there, INEC, before they release that, okay, the process of recall cannot start now until the requirement, the constitutional requirement and the prerequisites have actually been followed through before they can be able to initiate it. Yes, the process of recall can be initiated by the constituent of a parliamentary, a senator or a House of Rep members initiating it, and then by actually be able to get a sizable number, maybe almost half of the people in the polling units initiating the recall, and then that happened there yesterday. But of course, people have been saying, has this been politically motivated?
I feel like the whole thing.
But we know there will definitely be political dynamics. Yes, you see one of the senators, the senator that's also representing Kogi West, yes, Senator Karimi, was actually saying, yes, that's what the people of Kogi wanted. Also, a fellow senator from the same state mentioning that was actually able to justify that there is no political motivation there.
Yes.
It is what our constituent wanted. She has not been able to represent them well, and the people felt the need to do that. But at the other side of the divide, at the other side of the spectrum, is to say that this has been politically motivated. A woman who has spoken out about her pain point, and instead of the people to be able to listen to her, she's being victimized as a result of that, because of a complaint. But the space is actually, the dynamics, the political dynamics of that is actually changing, and we're trying to be able to see how it will be able to unfold in the days ahead.
Well, this is a very developing story, so we'll keep you updated on how it unfolds. Well, the Vanguard paper, finally, the Vanguard paper says, we have very little time left, so the Vanguard paper says, the bid to bomb another pipeline in Rivers failed, says police, army, navy, and the Air Force and others vow to protect critical infrastructures in states. NLC, TUC in Rivers threaten strike if emergency rules is not reversed. Court asked to sack Rivers sole administrator Ibas. Tinubu AGF 36 state listed as defendants. Rivers sole administrator appoint SSG. It's so because of the time we have. Yes, it's a lot to unpack. It's like a whole package of.
But maybe the whole thing there was just the attack that was heard yesterday.
Yes.
The Nigerian police, the Nigerian police force, the Navy counterpart, the Air Force, and other security architectures, other security outfits. Also mentioned that there was an attempt to be able to bomb part of the critical infrastructure yesterday. But that was actually failed. Attempts have actually been there. The militants, don't forget, they've been threatening fire and brimstone that they'll be able to bring down the state and the nation and the nation to his knees if certain things are actually not met. And those are what you have actually been able to see there. Yesterday, when we actually briefed the media, so the joint operation by the Nigerian Police, Nigerian Navy, and Nigerian Air Force claimed that, in fact, they mentioned a particular thing. It's what I'm trying to go to look out for. They mentioned a particular thing that was actually seized from the assailants. Those are actually trying to be able to do that. The group of Rivers State, blah, blah, blah. Of well Nigerians disclosed that so several attempts, so there were even like about 4 attempts were made yesterday. That's what I'm going. 4 attempts were actually made by criminal elements to bomb critical assets, pipelines generally, and in the process of actually trying to be able to foil them, one of them died. They attempted to be able to detonate. They bought explosives that they wanted to be able to detonate on the pipeline, but one of them actually lost their lives and someone was actually arrested. As a result of that, I think we look at that. But another development that happened in Rivers State yesterday was the Nigeria Labour Congress, who
threatened to strike.
Who joined to go on strike.
Yes,
if the emergency rule is actually not reversed. Is not reversed. I think they have that particular thing there, and a whole lot of other things that those developments that actually be able to take place in the whole of Rivers State yesterday. Some have actually been able to take even the federal government to court over the emergency power, over the emergency rule, and that the court will likely be able to take to start proceedings on that to see whether the president truly have the powers, to be able to invoke emergency powers or to suspend a democratically elected governor and sitting governor, and then I think those things are also there. Labour to be able to lend their voice into it to say no. We are calling for the reversal of this thing. This thing is actually not reversed. But the president and the presidency are doubling down to say Section 304 give us the power to do it.
Yes, it does give the president the power to declare state of emergency, but does it give the president the power to suspend governor? That's the question.
That's what judiciary, the court, as we're supposed to interpret.
Yes,
when you look at Section 305, the subsection there, they didn't really say anything about suspending a governor. So, which is exactly where those things are now. So,
is it an arbitrary use of power?
So that's what it is.
Those are the questions that were being asked.
Should need to be able to help us provide clarity.
And it's interesting that the decision was a step or a move to bring calm and bring peace. And
otherwise,
what we've
things would have gone out of course.
And what I've seen
would have
is just...
gone out of hand, and I agree with you.
Yes.
But just like a week ago, Tuesday last week was when it happened. Between just that Monday and Tuesday, 3 different bombs. 3 different pipeline infrastructure. Even the back
went up in flames. And it's what I'm seeing now is that the expectation is not as expected, right? The expectation of the decision is not what is being seen right now. In as much as yes, the political, it was all political drama in the first place. So now the political drama is which led to all what we've seen, right? It's subsidized a little. We're now seeing the private sector or people or the institutions in the states coming out to say this, because apart from what we're seeing here, we've seen several times or we've seen several videos of Rivers State people, Rivers State should I call them citizens now coming out to say that we're happy with Fubara.
Okay, of course. While it was there.
So this was not this is not
what we wanted.
This is not what we wanted. This is not the decision that we agree with. Was it successful?
Okay.
But it's so successful, really.
Okay. So
apart from the fact that it's eased some people's wishes.
Frayed nerves, okay? Because what I'm saying here is, just like you heard this side of the story, what the president did just last week Tuesday on the 21st or thereabout, when 20th, when the president announced that Tuesday last week, was that because I remember the morning before then, 2 pipelines, critical infrastructures were bombed, and then I know what the president was actually trying to be able to invoke economic sabotage that might likely be able to follow up, and the way it is actually be able to go. Yes, if you look at the legislators, remember the face-off was actually between the lawmakers, 27 of them who are per wiki, and the governor. Yeah, they were saying yes, they are okay with it, they are fine with emergency powers, and then by 6 months they will be able to put their house in order, and everything will actually be able to come back to normal. Yes, you have the variants, especially the job people who felt like no, this is an affront on our people, and we cannot be able to do this. And we even see militants among them, where they want threatening fire and brimstone to say we are going to be able to bring down the country to its knees. We'll bomb critical infrastructure.
And who fueled that?
Who
fueled that?
Of course, all of us will be able to feel it.
Fuel. I mean, who fanned
those flames? That's what they were saying. Was it the governor that did that?
Was it the governor?
That's what they were saying.
Or was
the governor that was actually emboldening them. He didn't come out to be able to condemn them, because the Minister of Justice was saying, oh, these people were threatening that when the lawmakers are saying they're going to impeach the governor, and they were saying if the governor is impeached, then we are going to be able to resume hostilities, bombing and that, things like that. So the Minister of Justice was saying, the governor was actually listening to the job people saying that, and he never puts out any word there to caution them or to say anything in that regard. That was what they actually be able to accuse him of, and that he's emboldening them. He's actually be able to give them some grounds to be able to fly, and if care is not taken, maybe they will likely be able to make their threat come true. So that was actually the ground they are relying on to say we needed to be able to wait in here. If we be able to delay this further, things that be able to go beyond.
What I would say, because of the time we have, is when two kids fight, you don't scold one
and
then pamper the other. It's
another thing that we've seen.
Exactly, it creates resentment from
one party against the other.
Exactly. So if a decision is
that's what the governor, the president,
should be made across board.
To say, please, as you actually be able to, as you actually be able to want this, let's also be able to go to the fact that
fair share
be able to
be received by the other,
just
for a balanced
of course,
use of power, and at the same time
balance, or maybe an unfair, maybe to show that you are not biased and you are impartial. Indeed. But the way it appears, and then pinning one blame on one and the other, resentment and hatred, you definitely be able to follow through.
Oh well, very interesting conversations we've had on the paper review this morning. Do stay with us. We'll be right back with the big story. Thank you very much, Mohammed, for joining us in the studio.